Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra.
Wow. Bien, gracias. It is great to be here with you. You know, I just landed from Washington, D.C. Wow, is it nice to be in California? I was going to say it was cold, but I mean not weather-wise. I mean politically, it was cold. And it is great to be here with so many of you from the Mexican Heritage Plaza. Did you all have a chance to see some of the mariachi? You know, we should send a delegation of mariachis to Washington, D.C., and I bet you we get a lot of things done. You know? Maybe a little bit of tequila as well to make sure you lubricate the process. Anyway, look, I'm thrilled to get to join the Vice President as she continues to go around the country to educate and to talk the truth about what's going on. And thank you to the second gentleman, Mr. Imhoff, for always being there and being such a supporter. They are a dynamic duo, and they're from California, so what can you say? I mean, it doesn't hurt. All I know is that we all got to be in this one. There is nothing we can leave in our pocket. It has to go all out on the field. By the way, San Francisco may have a chance to bring home a trophy, right? The Lombardi Trophy. So. Yeah, but just don't let them score 21 points against the 49ers by first half. Let's do this a different way, guys. Come on. It is tough being in D.C. and having to root from 3,000 miles away and tell people, don't worry, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And sure enough. But I'm going to tell you this. Dobbs, it will be overturned. It's going to happen. I'm telling you right now. You got to hear from our U.S. senators. You got to hear from Assemblywoman Hicks. I know that there are several other members of the legislature who are here, other leaders who have taken on the task as civic and community voices, to the business community members who are here. Planned Parenthood in the house. I'm going a little off script, but I got to tell you, you know, I'm the first secretary to actually visit a Planned Parenthood site in the nation. The first secretary in the history of the country. That doesn't make any sense. It's healthcare. Why did our secretaries of Health and Human Services not go visit before? Because so much work is being done, not just for women, but for families to help them. And anyway, to all the people, Jessica Paz de Dios, and to Vanessa Shi, can I just say thank you for letting us be here? Yes, at the Mexican Heritage Plaza. Thank you for letting us use this venue. Okay, let me get to the business. We're here because you're here. We care because you care. We fight because you fight. We are in this together. And I got to tell you, at the Department of Health and Human Services, boy, are we in this deep and for the long haul. We're protecting your rights to contraception care. We're protecting your right to privacy as a patient or as a provider. We're protecting your right to emergency medical care to save your life or stabilize your health. We're enforcing requirements on health insurers and on pharmacies to ensure that they give you the care that you are entitled to. That includes contraception care without any costs out of your pocket. And if you haven't already, I invite you to visit the website that we established at HHS far before the Dobbs decision came out. It is called reproductiverights.gov. Why? Because as I said, we're with you, and we're not waiting till something happens to show you that we're with you. And so if you need any information, if someone is not sure what their rights are, regardless of what state they're in, reproductiverights.gov. Please have them go. We do this because we know that doctors and women throughout America are facing risks and threats to their life and their well-being. We do this because we know a 10-year-old rape victim must leave her home and her state to receive the abortion care she needs. We do this because tens of thousands of women and girls who became pregnant, not just those who are 10-year-old, men or women have to understand throughout our country that there are women and girls today, tens of thousands of women and girls today who became pregnant because they were raped, and they live in states that ban abortion care. We do this because of doctors like Carolina Reyes, my doctor, my wife, a OBGYN who handles high-risk pregnancies and has done so for decades. She and her colleagues are being forced to weigh legal opinions before they can render medical opinions. We're here with you because medical students are choosing not to establish their practices in states, sometimes their home states, that attack reproductive rights and health care. And that leaves women in those states with even less access to the care that they need. And we're here with you today because our daughters, my 3 daughters, have fewer rights today than their mothers and grandmothers. Poet Robert Frost said it very well. How many things have to happen to you before something occurs to you? America, how many things have to happen to you and your people before something occurs to you? Now, sisters and brothers, the Biden-Harris administration, the Department of Health and Human Services, we know what's happening. And we're not waiting. We are going to take action. We're going to stand up. We're going to join you. We will be there. Because we are in this fight to win it. We are here to protect the rights to health care for all Americans. And that includes abortion care and contraception. Make no mistake, the president and the vice president have made it clear. We will not stand for this. We're not in government to take away rights and to begin discriminating against people. And we don't think it's a good idea to go back to the battle days for America that has to be ready for the 21st century. And so I end as I started. We're here because you're here. We fight because you fight. We care because you care. And if you're going to stand up, you will see us right by your side. Go to it. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Dr. Pratima Gupta.
Good afternoon, fellow Californians, reproductive health warriors, and Second Gentleman Douglas M. Hoff. My name is Dr. Pratima Gupta. My pronouns are she, her, aya, and I'm a double board-certified OBGYN and board member of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. My hardest job, however, is that I'm also the parent to 2 young children who keep me humble. I live and practice in our gorgeous Golden State, where as a part of comprehensive medical care, I provide birth control, deliver babies, and provide abortion care, because reproductive health care is essential for people's health, safety, and well-being. Recently, I saw a young Asian woman, I'll call her Rachel. She gave me permission to share her story. She had traveled from a restrictive state, I still remember her sparkly pink phone case. After consultation with her partner and her mother, she decided to terminate her pregnancy. I performed her abortion. I gave her the birth control that she wanted, and we should be proud of this care in California because this is how it should work everywhere. But it's not a perfectly happy ending. Despite receiving the care she wanted, Rachel still worried about her data privacy, about her text threads referencing abortion, and potential consequences for when she returned home. Abortion is a safe medical procedure. Some people who face medically unnecessary barriers to abortion care come to California, but they may have delays in getting here and securing access. Many cannot overcome those barriers at all and are forced to continue their pregnancy. Abortion care is respect, abortion care is compassion, abortion care is dignity. Being unable to obtain an abortion has major effects on people's lives, their health, and their well-being. And when access to reproductive health care is restricted, our communities of color and people with low incomes, our queer community, our youth, and our immigrant community experiences those effects most profoundly. Here in California, we are welcoming trainees from states with restrictions and showing, not just telling them, that abortion is not just for cis, wealthy, able-bodied white people, but it's for anyone who no longer wishes to be pregnant. I recently saw a young Latinx woman who had driven herself 4 hours from Arizona. The logistics of the mandatory waiting period and finding an appointment were not feasible with her work schedule and childcare. After her uncomplicated procedure, she literally hopped off the table and wanted to immediately head back home for her 4-hour drive because she had a babysitter for a prearranged amount of time. I begged her to stay for just 10 minutes so we could observe her for bleeding before her long drive back home. This is how we do it in California. I will stick to my day job and leave the singing to Montel Jordan. But we provide high quality, timely, affordable, and personal abortion care, meeting people's needs in California. And California is where rights are not just respected, but they're also protected under the law. Policies like ours can affect real change. In California, we have protections for people from other states' abortion bans, laws protecting private reproductive health information, laws protecting patients and physicians, and efforts to expand the reproductive health care workforce so we can continue to meet the needs of California and our neighbors. Los abortos todavía siguen legal en California. Tenemos que proteger y apoyar a nuestros vecinos. Estamos aquí para servirles hoy y siempre. Abortion care is inclusive, abortion care is patient-centered, and abortion care is justice. Vice President Harris and President Biden know this, and they're fighting to make sure that every American has access to reproductive health care. And that's why we're here today. First, please join me in giving a warm California welcome to actor and activist Sophia Bush. Now, it's my honor and privilege to introduce a longtime champion in our fight for reproductive freedom. Someone who has fought for women here in her home state of California as a district attorney and attorney general, and for women across America as our senator. And now, as the first woman in history to be elected Vice President of the United States. Please join me in welcoming our Vice President, Kamala Harris. Welcome home, Vice President.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, San Jose.
I mean, how cool is this? Before we get into serious business, I just personally want to extend a thank you. We did this for the first time, having a conversation like this one 2 years ago on a college campus across the country. And day in and day out, while you are in the position to hold the issues of the world, you keep our rights a top issue in the administration and in the White House, and on behalf of all women and potentially pregnant people everywhere, I just want to thank you.
Thank you, Sophia.
Okay, so we are in a moment as a nation, and I'm curious from your vantage point how you see it and why you have decided to lead this Fight for Reproductive Freedoms tour.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's great to be with you, Sophia, and thank you for sharing the stage and for using your voice in such an important way. And I want to thank the senators who are here. I know that we had Senator Padilla, Butler, who are here. They are doing extraordinary work along with the Secretary, Javier Becerra, and so many others. And so I want to just acknowledge them in front of all of the friends, as well as my husband, the first, second gentleman of the United States. So here we are, January of 2024. Where just over a year ago, the highest court in our land, the Court of Thurgood and RBG, took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the people of America, from the women of America. And thereafter, in state after state, we have seen extremists, so-called leaders, propose and pass laws that would criminalize healthcare providers, some of them literally legislating prison for life, punishing women, making no exception even for rape or incest. You know, I will tell you, let me say, in a real democracy, everyone has a right to have their voice heard. The President and I are working on that every single day. So back to what we were discussing. We are looking at a situation. We're looking at a situation in our country where there are people who are literally suffering, most silently suffering because of what has been proposed and or passed in states across our country. Part of why I'm doing this tour is because I think that more people, not the people here, but more people who may not be here and are not as attuned to what's happening in real time must understand. You know, for years, so many of us, we were in marches, we've talked, we have fought, let's keep Roe alive, we have to protect Roe, and we all did. Most of us for our entire adult lives, it was intact. We knew it was precious and we need to defend it. We knew it was precious, but we kind of thought it would always be there. And now we have seen that it has been taken, and all over our country, Dr. Gupta started to talk about that. The number of people who are suffering, we're all grown in here, so I'm gonna just speak fact because fact must be told. Women are having miscarriages in toilets in our country. I've met women who were in the midst of a miscarriage, who went to an emergency room to seek health care and were rejected by the healthcare professionals there, who were afraid they would be jailed for providing women in distress health care. I met a woman who literally developed sepsis, and it was not until she developed sepsis that she received the health care that she needed. We have a lot of very important issues that we all must discuss, but the topic for this discussion is what we need to do to fight back against laws that are criminalizing healthcare providers and making women suffer in our country. Yes, we are going to win this election. Yes, we will. So, there are a lot of big issues impacting our world right now, which evoke rightly very, very strong emotions and fears and anger and tears and concerns. The topic for today here is the topic of what has happened in our country after the Dobbs decision, which took away the right of people to make decisions about their own body and has resulted in extreme harm. And so I'm going to get back to the issue because it's an important one, and we should not be distracted from any important issue. So what we're talking about, what we're looking at in these states, for example, that have made no exception even for rape or incest. Now, many of you, I grew up in California in the Bay Area. Many of you know my career. So you know that I started my career as a prosecutor. What you may not know is one of the biggest reasons why. When I was in high school, one of my closest friends, one of my best friends, I learned was being molested by her stepfather. And when I learned, I said to her, you have to come and stay with us. I called my mother, and my mother said, of course she does, and she came to stay with us. And I decided at a very early age, I wanted to do everything I could to protect women and children from harm. And I specialized for a long time in my career as a prosecutor, including when I was working as AG, on crimes affecting women and children. No exception even for rape or incest. Let's understand what that means. It means that these so-called leaders are saying to a survivor of a crime of violence to their body, a violation to their body, that they don't have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That's immoral. This is what's happening around our country. So when we talk about the layers of harm, be it harm to our democracy, harm to our Constitution, harm to our freedoms and our rights, and we then understand the real harm that also exists every day for individuals who are being denied the health care they need. It's extraordinary, and for that reason, I know we all are approaching this with a sense, yes, of empathy and understanding, but also profound commitment, with a sense of urgency to do something about it, to end the pain and the suffering that is happening right now in real time in our country. And so that's the issue as much as anything. And the way that we are going to ultimately deal with this is to, one, have some consensus, which I do believe exists, which is that one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. If she chooses, she will consult with her pastor, her priest, her rabbi, her imam, but not the government telling her what to do. And so we need, this November, to elect a majority of people in the United States Congress who simply agree it's not the government's right to tell a woman what's in her own best interest when she knows what's in her own best interest and doesn't need some person walking around with a flag pin to tell her what to do. And Joe Biden has been very clear, when Congress puts back in place the rights that the court took away, he will sign it into law. He will sign into law the protections of Roe v. Wade. So that's part of the task in front of us right now.
I don't think it's lost on any of us in this moment, here or in the world, given the conversation we're all having, that, as you said earlier, when extremism comes home to roost, whether it's here in America or around the world, it's women and girls who suffer worst. And it can feel overwhelming to try to hold all of these issues. I know for me as a citizen, I look to you, and I can't imagine the pressure you feel with all of us looking to you going, tell us what to do. But one of the things that you often encourage us to do when we feel helpless in the face of global suffering and of the suffering of women and girls and at-risk people is to get involved locally.
Yes.
That's why you're here on a local tour with us talking about this issue while you daily hold all the rest of them. And I'm curious, for those of us who, don't get the binders and the briefings, what should we be doing in our states, and what can we encourage our states to do, and what can states do across the nation to fight back and protect our reproductive freedoms?
That's great. So I'll start with this. Part of the environment in which this issue exists is an environment that is heavily laden with judgment. Suggesting to these individuals, suggesting to these women that they've done something wrong and something they should be embarrassed about. And understand then the layers that come along with that, that include making her feel as though she's alone. And as we know, one of the things that can be most disempowering is when people feel they're alone, when they feel they don't have community, much less support, when they feel they're being judged and outcast as opposed to embraced. And so this is the power of each of us as individuals in a community, in a society, on every level, including this one, which is to think about how you use the way that you talk with people, be it, Mom Peg, I see you here, my mother-in-law's here. That's gonna be by the telephone, or text, or social media, but the ways that we can talk with people, friends and strangers, about the issue, to remind them about what's at stake and the harm that is happening every day. I have seen, as I am traveling the country on this issue, I've seen the power of that communication. I have met with people who started, especially before the Dobbs decision came down, and were vehement that they were opposed to abortion, and who have not abandoned their faith and whatever reason it is for why they feel that way and strongly about themselves and their family, but also didn't know and weren't aware of the suffering that would happen as a result. And now, knowing the suffering that is happening, are reconsidering their position in terms of the policy of it all. The policy being to deny other people a decision to make that very important decision for themselves and not the government telling them. So the power of communication on this is very important. I think there's also another thing that is at play on so many issues in our country, which is, if you will, I think a certain thing that is quite perverse that is being pushed by some so-called leaders, which is to suggest that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of who you lift up, right? you know, there's a thing happening that suggests that to care about people somehow is a sign of weakness, when we all know that one of the great characteristics and character of real leadership is the character that has some level of concern, curiosity, and compassion about the suffering of other people, and then wants to do something about alleviating that suffering. And so I work with the belief that the vast majority of people in our country have that feeling. So the work that needs to be done over these next 10 months includes using our voices to really help people understand how this is affecting people in real time. Because there's nothing abstract about this issue. There's nothing hypothetical about it. It does not require, and it absolutely deserves more than some kind of intellectual political debate. It requires action to stop the harm that is happening right now. And that's about organizing. Californians, thankfully, we have a state that has done beautiful and important work to protect rights, to put it in the Constitution. This is very important. But we have neighboring states, not so much. And so think about, you know, how you travel and when you travel to do that. But the other point that I'd make on being a Californian right now, don't get too comfortable with that. Because if these folks have their way, and they've already articulated it as part of their agenda, they'll get a national ban. So let's understand, none of us can afford to sit back and say, thank God we're in California. Right. Because as we know, they go for, and then they come for you, right? And so let's keep that in mind as well. And we just got to hustle over these next 10 months. You know, Doug and I have been very clear. We came home for the holiday, and it was very funny. I had a lot of friends here, so I'll just share with you a little personal story. We slept. I mean, we were just tired. We slept. Doug looked at me. He was like, honey, I think we're defrosting, right? And I cooked, which is my happy place and family. But all knowing that starting in January, got to hit the road this year already in the last 2.5 weeks. I'm looking at Javier. I've been North Carolina, South Carolina twice, Nevada twice, Georgia, Wisconsin, New York, California in the first 2.5 weeks. So, and Alex Padilla's been there, LaFonza Butler. So we got a lot of ground to cover, all of us. And we can make a difference on this issue for people that, by the way, for the most part, we may never meet. For people who, for the most part, will never know any of our names, but whose lives will forever be impacted because of the work that we do in organizing and using our voices at this moment.
When we hold these two things to be true at the same time, the fact that we in California were lucky enough to enshrine our rights via Proposition 1 into our state laws, but we're looking at the risk of a national ban. We see the extremists on the GOP side going after mifepristone and medication abortion, which over 50% of pregnant people use when they are in need. We're talking about the potential denial of care even here if the mail stops. And when we talk about the strain that comes into our state from our surrounding states where our friends don't have the rights that we do here at this time, we're really doing the math locally, but potentially nationally, for a true healthcare crisis.
Yeah.
This is a crisis.
You're absolutely right.
And
you're absolutely right.
I'm just curious, can you walk us through who's responsible for this? Because this was an intentional crisis.
Indeed.
And you've mentioned that the Supreme Court overturned Roe, but can we just cover how we got to that point?
I think we should.
I think we should too. Feels appropriate to tell some truth.
So, the former president of the United States handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo Roe. Let's be very clear about it. And he has been very clear that that is exactly what he intended. Just take him at his word. Take him at his word when he said recently he's proud of what he did. And I asked, proud? Looking at Christine Pelosi. I asked, proud? Proud that doctors might go to jail for giving health care? Proud that women are having miscarriages without any health care that they need? Proud that fundamental freedoms have been taken from the American people? To understand the arrogance that is associated with the taking, and then what we are up against. And so this is why we know what is before us and the fight that is before us. This is a fight that is fundamental, and it is fundamentally about freedom. Freedom. The freedom to make decisions about your own body. And understand, as we step back, there is, and I travel our country, there is afoot a full-on intent to attack hard-fought, hard-won freedoms in our country. Just look at what is happening. Look at what is happening with a Don't Say Gay bill. Okay? So now, I will remind my fellow Californians, in 2004, actually Valentine's weekend, 2004, so it'll be 20 years, I was proud to be one of the first elected officials in the country to perform same-sex marriages. Almost 20 years ago. A Don't Say Gay bill. So imagine this. So 20 years ago. So this means that some young teacher in Florida is afraid to put up a photograph of themselves and their partner for fear they may be fired. For doing what? For doing the God's gift to all of us to avow themselves to teach other people's children. As it is, they don't get paid enough. In 2024, we're looking at attacks on the LGBTQ community. In 2024. We're looking at attacks on the freedom to vote and access to the ballot. I was just in Georgia. You know, they passed a law in Georgia to make it illegal to give people food and water while they stand in line to vote. What happened to love thy neighbor? I mean, the hypocrisy abounds. The kinds of freedoms that are under attack in America right now. And I would offer, you know, I asked my team to create a Venn diagram for me. I love Venn diagrams. And, you know, whenever you're kind of looking at something complex, a Venn diagram can usually help you out. And the overlap then, right, between where we're seeing the attacks against voting rights, where we're seeing the attacks against LGBTQ, where they're seeing the attacks against reproductive freedom, and you would not be shocked to see the profound intersection between them. So this also then, I say, as we organize and think about these next many months, is an opportunity to rededicate ourselves, not only to community building, but as an extension of that, coalition building. Let's bring together all the folks who've been fighting for voting rights, all the folks who've been fighting for LGBTQ rights, all the folks who have been fighting for reproductive health rights, including maternal health rights and maternal mortality, fighting against that. Right? By the way, on that issue, Sophia, so I've also been doing a lot of work over many years on the issue of combating maternal mortality. We have, as a so-called developed nation, one of the highest rates of maternal mortality of any nation in the world. It's a crying shame. And so, again, the hypocrisy abounds. In the states with the top 10 worst numbers on maternal mortality all have bans. I say to these so-called extremist leaders, okay, so you say that your work to ban abortion, ban access to reproductive health care is because you are so concerned about mothers and children? Well, why you been silent on maternal mortality? Where you been? When I became vice president, I issued a challenge to states: extend Medicaid coverage for postpartum care from what is the standard 2 months to 12 months. When I started, 3 states were doing it. Now 43 have done it, right? Right? All these issues are connected. All these issues are connected.
That gives me hope. The coalition building, the work that you all are succeeding on. And we need hope in a world that feels so heavy. I want to know what gives you hope for the year ahead, because you're gearing up for a big fight. We know what we're up against. It can't be easy. What keeps you positive and ready for this?
A number of things. I mean, one, this audience. I mean, and I know who's here. I know who's here, and each of you have so many other things you could be doing with your time, so many other obligations, and the individuals here have come together as a community to stand together and with each other on a very important issue that's going to require a certain level of selflessness on behalf of us all, and certainly sacrifice to speak up. What gives me hope is an understanding that we all know history, there has never been any progress that has come about in our country, as far as I'm concerned, that came about without a fight. It requires a fight. You know, here's how I think about democracy as an extension of all the points we're making about fighting for freedoms. The nature of democracy, there's a duality to it. On the one hand, it's very strong. When a democracy is intact, what it does to protect and preserve individual rights and freedoms and the dignity of people, the equality of people, it's very strong what it does for its people. It is also very fragile. It is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. And so fight we will. You know, we just not long ago celebrated the birthday of Martin Luther King. And when I do, and I always do, I will always also refer to the great Coretta Scott King. And because she too was a great freedom fighter. And Coretta Scott King, I'll paraphrase, but she famously said, and I quote it all the time, the fight for civil rights, which is the fight for freedom, right? The fight for equality. She said, must be fought and won with each generation. And by that, I think she had 2 points. One, it is the nature of our fight for freedoms that whatever gains we make, the nature is they will not be permanent. It's just the nature of it. Therefore, understanding that, we must always be vigilant. We must understand how precarious and precious this all is and commit ourselves every day to stand for and fight for these rights and these freedoms. And so, you know, understanding it's the nature of it, I think that we know what the job is ahead of us. We know. So let us remember, there's a lot to fight for. And look, as I like to say, and we all say many times, when we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. And there are are a lot of folks who need to know that the people who can be in a room like this are thinking of them, because there are a lot of folks who will never be in this room, can't be in this room. And I think we all know it is our duty, not just our responsibility, but that we have a duty to stand for these most essential freedoms. And this is an era right now where we are looking at these attacks and we're clear-eyed about where it's coming from, and I think that when we show that we are going to stand in solidarity, at some point folks are going to realize they can't win with this stuff. And that means all of us being in it together, holding each other up, taking care of each other. In this moment when there are people trying to divide our country and distract us from what's important, let's just hold on to each other, look at the person next to you if you don't know them, and just let them know we're all in this together, okay? We're all in this together. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.